Well, welcome everybody. So glad you're joining us again for this kind of midweek mental checkup, if you will. And today, I'm so blessed to have Dr. Kellye Carver with us. She's a member of our church at St. John Lutheran Church, but she also does amazing things with veterans. She works for the Dallas-Fort Worth VA Hospital, and specifically, she works with couples, help counseling couples, and also those who've gone through trauma. So she is a great person to have with us today as we focus on couples in quarantine. How do we love each other through this? So Kellye, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a very gracious intro.
Well, I'm just going to call her Kellye because we do ministry together, good friends. And so even though she's an amazing doctor, we're just going to call her Kellye. So also you can feel comfortable to maybe interact as well. If you're watching this video and you're on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and comment in the section below if you have some questions. If there are some private questions you might have and you want some answers from me or Kellye and maybe a topic for us to cover in the future, please make sure that you send those privately. You can also email me at tim.perkins@stjohnmansfield.org. So many ways to connect with us, and we look forward to helping you because that's why we're doing this. So, okay, couples in quarantine, Kellye. So we probably got married, we went on honeymoon, and we thought, maybe we didn't think about it, but I look back and think our honeymoon week was probably the most we'll ever spend with each other at 1 7-day period. But I'm telling you, I think for most of us, especially if there's two at home and we're working from home and maybe we have kiddos running around, we're spending just an amazing amount of time with one another. And sometimes it can get a little crazy and stressful. So you have some tips for us today on how to make this in a very godly way, in a loving way, not only tolerable, but maybe even better than what's going on now. So what are some of your ideas?
Yeah. Well, and the added bonus of honeymoon, right? We joke that, oh, everything's still shiny and new and exciting, and you're probably in some kind of tropical location, and this is not like that. Right?
No.
So it's important to notice that this is new for all of us. We're all trying to figure this out. This is stressful. Now, there are lots of good things. There are lots of perks that can come out of this, lots of silver linings, lots of ways that marriages and relationships can be blessed. But we just want to put it out there and put it on the table. This is stressful. This is different. We've thrown off routines. We're maybe both working from home. We're around each other a lot more. That can make us just a little more on top of each other, or a little more irritable, kind of in each other's space. We're not kind of in our happy place. Maybe our normal stress outlets are different. So let's just put it out there. It's okay if this is stressful. It's normal if you're stressful. Anytime there's a period of adjustment like this, it's going to cause stress. It's going to throw us off. If your marriage was already stressed or struggling, this could make that even more challenging. Conversely, if you were doing really well, it's also okay if this has really thrown you for a loop and you're just not quite sure, or feeling a little stuck or a little lost. So
it kind of sounds like no matter where you are on the spectrum, whether you were having stress before, whether things were going really well, this is such a huge weight on a relationship. And it's not the normal, if you will, that you shouldn't feel like, oh, there's something wrong with us or wrong with me. There's just ways maybe that we can figure out, well, how do I edit my behavior, some of my choices, maybe the way I'm communicating, you name it, that'll help make this a better experience. So what are some tangible ways that we can do that? You had mentioned some to me before, and I thought, boy, there's just some good ideas.
Yeah. So one thing that we can have are boundaries. Now, that's a word that we throw around a lot. I'm going to talk about a couple different kinds of boundaries. So one is thinking about maybe some emotional boundaries. Now, we can throw up walls, and those can be really unhealthy emotional boundaries. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more thinking about the different pieces of your life, the different parts of who you are. Your marriage or your romantic relationship is going to be one of those pieces. There's also going to be pieces of maybe you're a parent or you're an employee. You are yourself, right? So we have these different kind of emotional identities and different personalities that we have. Maybe not personalities, that might be the wrong word, but we have different aspects of who we are, and all of them are really important. Now, you and I had talked before about how the marriage and the family is actually the foundation. So we really need to look out for that part of our identity and that part of our relationship. I tell couples all the time, it can be so easy to put kids first and be a parent first, but that's actually not God's design for a marriage. And lo and behold, research backs God up and says that is actually not the healthiest way to go about it, because kiddos are looking to parents for that stability and that security. I tell my patients, my couples, that you can't build a really amazing house unless you've got a really solid foundation. You can't build a really solid, healthy family without that really solid foundation. So with all of these different identities, marriage is really important and being a partner is really important, and you want to honor that. But that doesn't mean that you do it at the exclusion of, I also need some personal time. I need to have time at work. I need to have time doing some fun stuff with the kids. I need to have time doing chores or tasks around the house. So that's one thing, Pastor Tim, is just be really careful about, while the marriage is really, really important and it is the foundation of the family, that's not the only thing that we're doing. Conversely, we're not only a parent, we're not only an employee, and we need to respect all of these different things. And just because you're together a lot right now doesn't mean that marriage needs to take up all of the time. You'll probably drive each other crazy.
Absolutely. And it kind of reminds me of the old idea of it's quality, not quantity. So together all the time, you're like, oh, well, our marriages, we see each other more, but it's what you do at that time you're together. And, as you mentioned that, the world seems to push, big time. It's like, kids and job. And they tell us that kids are number one, sacrifice the whole weekend for sports, this and that. We're getting an opportunity now that we're home. There's no sports. There's not all these different activities to kind of like reassess maybe and relaunch the idea that marriage relationship is primary, as God points out, from the beginning, that we become that one flesh. In Genesis, God says we're that one flesh. We leave our father and mother, and now that's the foundation. But there is a balance there. And I bet you see in the counseling field that a lot of issues may become, especially with the timing and everybody being together, is that it's a balance issue, right? I mean, you kind of go to the extremes as you're mentioning there of, well, I've got to totally focus on this, that, or this. So what are some structural ways that people can do this, whether it's boundaries and proximity in the home, maybe like what you mentioned, or emotional? How do we do that?
Yeah, you're right. That's a great point. Because we talked about that first set of boundaries, right? We talked about maybe some emotional boundaries around just different aspects of yourself and who you are, and honoring all of those. The second piece, though, is it doesn't hurt to have some physical boundaries. So maybe while I'm at work, I have this distinct portion of the house or this distinct portion of the room where I'm working, and I want to honor that. There's a lot to be said for that, because it can help us zone into certain tasks or a certain mindset. Maybe then I go have lunch with my spouse. I go to the dining room table. I go to the kitchen. Maybe I take my break or my lunch in there. Right? Maybe for my personal time, my hobbies, my interests, I have a reading nook, and that's where I do my quiet time with the Lord. That's where I have my prayer time. That's where I read a favorite library book. Or maybe I let my family know, hey, mom or wife or whoever needs to just have some time. I'm going to go up, to the media room and watch a movie for a while, whatever works for you. But having some physical kind of zones in the house, you may have seen that in different news articles or different how-tos, but having different zones can really be helpful in separating out those different pieces. Because if they all come together, if we're trying to eat while we're, sitting there working at our desk, or if our spouse is trying to talk to us while we're at work, things get muddy and they get tense, and we're not always our best self. So we have the emotional side where we've got different identities, and we want to respect those things. And we can reinforce that with maybe some physical boundaries, some physical zones. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. That kind of brings up a question I'm thinking of. I've talked to some people in the church and just out and about, and they're like, well, my life really hasn't changed a lot because I always have worked from home. My spouse, now they're officing at home. It's really hard. How do we go about loving on the one that is transitioning in and then being basically not territorial, right? Because it's like usually during the day, kids are at school. This is my office. I get the whole house, someone might say, and now I got the kids, but my spouse is here. What are some techniques, maybe communication-wise, or you name it, that they broach that subject?
Absolutely. So communication is going to be key. So you want to be communicating about the boundaries. Hey, I was just actually talking with Steve yesterday. I'd asked him a question in the middle of the day. So I'm in the front office and he's set up at the dining room, and he doesn't normally work at home. And I usually work home maybe 3 days a week, not 5 days a week. So this is different for us too. I hear you. And I was like, hey, Steve. And then he's like, I'm in a meeting. And I went, oh,
no.
sorry,
Yeah.
so this is communication, and we had to figure out our own system of, okay, when do you have meetings? I don't want to interrupt. Hopefully there's not a lot of interruption in general, but if there's a question or something that comes up during the day, so maybe communicating in the morning or the evening before. Here's what I got on my docket for tomorrow. Maybe even a little whiteboard or a chalkboard outside the door. These are my really do not disturb times, or even some little construction paper or a Post-it. Mom or dad's unavailable, back at 3:00, whatever, so that you can keep those boundaries that we were talking about. So communicating, what does your schedule look like for the day? Are there some do not disturb times that you need respected? What are some of the things you're working on? Just connect over what are some of your goals for the week or some of your projects for the week. Letting your partner know what you need. Hey, I could really use some quiet time during these couple of hours. I'm working on a project, and I work best when I have quiet time, or I'm going to borrow the noise canceling headphones for these couple of hours because that'll help me zone in on this project. But you hit the nail on the head. The biggest piece is going to be communication. What are the goals? What are the needs? But also don't forget to tell your partner what they're doing right, what you appreciate. Hey, I love how, I so appreciated that you made an extra sandwich for me. I was, really scrambling, and I really appreciated that. Or thank you for letting me know that you had a meeting. I didn't realize that. And I appreciate you just communicating that. Or thank you for that, making coffee this morning. Your partner doesn't know what you like or what you appreciate unless you tell them.
Kellye, it reminds me that in the Bible, God, encourages us when there are struggles, allow him to work through that. Like in Romans chapter 8, it says, God works in all things, the good, the bad, the ugly. He works in all things.
Yeah.
For those who love him, called his purpose. And then, later on, like in James, it talks about persevering, under hard times. And I'm thinking, as you said that, communication, we can really actually, in a hard time like this, learn as we communicate more about our spouse. We'll learn what makes them tick more because we actually have the interaction opportunity. We maybe intentionally now, as you said, each night or each morning, say, okay, what's your schedule tomorrow? How often would we do that if, they're at work somewhere, and we might say, okay, do you have meetings at night when you're going to be home? But now you're getting to kind of learn about their day and kind of the routine and the flow of it. And that's kind of cool because, as we someday will come out of this, you'll look back and say, I didn't miss an opportunity to actually learn so much about my spouse. And some of us probably listening right now going, I don't want to learn anymore. I'm on overload, right? But
yes,
this is a good thing. We can process it more. So Kellye, thank you so much for your time today. We have a lot more to cover, actually. You had sent me some really neat things like some date ideas, how to do when we're here, and all sorts of different fun activities. So what we're going to do is, promise, we're going to have you back each Wednesday. If you're new to this is our third broadcast. And each Wednesday, I interview different people in the mental health and counseling field, members of our congregations, you name it, wonderful people with resources. And so we're going to have Dr. Kellye back with us real soon and talk about some of these other details, maybe on a part 2 and a part 3 with Dr. Kellye Carver. So again, I just thank you for taking time. It's a very well spent time. You're feeding into yourself, your relationship, your marriage. You're actually helping the world and helping yourself by listening to these. If you do have some comments and feedback, please put them below. You can reach out to us at tim.perkins@stjohnmansfield.org. I'd love to respond and help you in whatever ways we can. So take care. God bless, and we'll see you next time.